question on this page. I was
Sure.
noticing this. 25% of all these costs is engineering.
Yes. If you look at our sewer project,
Is there any way we can do anything with that?
actually there's two problems built into there, and I actually had an interesting conversation with Gary on this issue. One is that if it's a project over 100,000, you don't have to have a choice. State law says you have to have an engineer on the project. Other than that, the other problem that comes into place is there's certain grant monies now. Like for instance, Lake City has not received any grant money for their road projects. So they would not have to worry about the second issue. But it is actually, you're not allowed under certain granting opportunities to receive, when you ask for the proposals from the engineers, you're not allowed to ask them how much they'll charge you. You're allowed to negotiate with them prior to acceptance, but you're not, when you recognize the top 2 or 3 candidates, but you're not allowed to ask in the proposal itself, give us a rough estimate of what you think this project would cost us. State does not,
Wait a second, back that train up.
Sure.
Say we got $1 million project. You can't sit there and ask them, okay, what do you think the project's going to cost? They just turn around and present you a bill for $1 million.
For instance, let me give you an example, the sewer project. It's an easy one for us to all understand. We received $500,000 in CDBG money for the plant.
Yep.
The plant project was quoted in, and I believe it came in somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's just say, $5 million. Since that CDBG money was tied to that project, CDBG does not allow you to ask that question. So you would have to send out your proposals for engineers without asking for how much they would charge you. But that does not prevent you, once you have identified 1 or 2 that you want to negotiate with, to ask at that point. But you're not allowed.
Not initially.
You're not initially allowed to be involved in that process. It is, and the state makes the argument that the reason why they do that is they don't want you to get too wrapped, which I find so funny. They don't want you to get too wrapped up in cost, because the services are not always apples to apples that you get back. A lot of entities are unable to make good determinations on an apple-to-apple comparison. So that's one of the reasons why the state does not create that standard. That's also one of the reasons why this is one of the few areas where the low-cost bid provider program is not law. You are not required, of course, if you don't know what they're charging you, it would be impossible for you to know, but you are not subject to low-cost bidder process with engineering services.
Well, see, my thought, I was thinking about that because I know these engineering fees are just astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is hire somebody, okay, watch while they work.
Your engineering fees usually...
Why can't we do that?
Your engineering fees usually accumulate into a couple of things. One is the pre-design workup. Then you have the design itself. Then you have the post-design activities. The post-design activities typically involve inspection on-site, and they also include usually working as a liaison between the contractors and the entity themselves. They also provide, different ones provide different levels of services. I worked really hard with Darren on our sewer project to make sure we cash flowed the sewer project throughout the process of the project, to make sure we didn't run any trouble. They're not obligated under the contract to truly do that type of arrangement with us. They are obligated under our agreement to do a rate survey for us, which they're supposed to do one prior to the project and one towards the end of the project. And they have met that.
A rate survey.
Excuse me. It'll be less of a concern since we did we've done one prior and we also cash flowed the project. But say, for instance, the project ends up being delayed and there ends up being additional costs that, I'm just trying to come up with a scenario. Say the engine project ended up costing us an extra $1 million for some reason. Well, they would be able to go through at the end, do another cost survey and tell you that the amount of money you currently have coming into the sewer department is not enough to call it for your annual debt service created by the loans that you've taken on this project. And to be able to be solvent in that area, you would have to increase your rates by X amount of dollars of cash flow a year to be able to make the project cash flow. going on into the next 25 years to pay for the project.
That shouldn't be too difficult to figure out without.
No. But, and like I said, usually it's built into services. I'm not going to say you don't, there aren't elements of this that you can't do yourself. However, you are required to have a pre-design engineer in a over $100,000 project and a design engineer, without a doubt.
I just 25%. I'm going. My gosh, it's Friday, and they're not doing a darn thing. You know, turning a single spade or. You know, I thought that's just atrocious.
I have seen varying degrees of assistance with grants opportunities. Of course, that won't so much be the case with this project, since the possibilities for grant money will be pretty minimal. I mean, we'll be lucky if there'll be one that we'll be able to apply for. But usually they provide grant servicing too as well.
Well, I was just.
Sure, I'm glad. That's why we're doing this.